I believe in investing in emerging markets and investing internationally. Today, I'm going to share with you 10 countries I'm investing more in this year. I'm going to share with you what I've been researching and where I'm investing my own money. This is not me telling you where you should put your money. You should do your own research because your goals are different than mine. Don't take this as investment advice. And if you want to hear from other investment experts, you can come to Nomad Capitalist Live. It's our live event. We've got folks from Latin America, Africa, Asia, all over the world talking about what they're doing. Go to nomadcapitalist.com/live. Here are the 10 markets I'm actually investing for the first time or more money in this year. The first one is Mexico. I would have thought the peso would have dropped more after Trump was elected in November, but it didn't get beaten up that badly. I said it's going to rebound over time. I'm a long-term bull on Mexico, and I have been. I bought stuff before the current president was elected, and then everything got beaten up. I bought more throughout it. I'm now well in the black, and the peso has appreciated a little bit. And so buying up cheap financial stocks, buying up industrial stocks at a discount with copper predicted to do very well in the coming years, buying up airport stocks. And you have companies like FEMSA that own OXXO, this ubiquitous chain all over Mexico and Latin America. I think the peso over time will stabilize. And I'm a big believer in Mexico and its influence in the region. Number two is in Thailand. The stock market got beaten up. I had a friend of mine who lives in Thailand. He told me a couple of years ago, dude, don't invest in Thailand right now. I have had small investments in Thailand, and like everybody else, I've lost some money there. So I'm going back through old recommendations of good defensive stocks, buying those in Thailand. Obviously, Southeast Asia in general, and Thailand in particular, got beaten up with the U.S. tariffs that were being discussed. There are some good financial stocks. I am in the business of working with banks, and so I know which ones are good, which ones are bad, which ones are doing interesting things, where the locals are banking. That's something that I'm familiar with. So I am overweight personally on banks just because I work in the, among other things, offshore banking industry. And so I'm following the Peter Lynch model, buy what you know. I know banks and I know which ones are good and not, and I've done pretty well. So I will be looking at banks in Thailand. There are some industrials, the cement company, as well as you can get a residence permit, an investor residence, if you buy 10 million Thai baht, it's about 300,000 US dollars in bonds, or you put that money in a bank account. I think there may be some opportunities in bonds in Thailand, and having a residence permit in a relatively tax-friendly country that is great for lifestyle, great for luxury, is interesting. Number three, buying more in Japan. Warren Buffett inspired me a couple years ago. The Sogashoshas, the conglomerates, the basically family, investment houses are interesting. They're not as cheap as they were. They're still relatively cheap, as well as some pretty cheap, growth at a reasonable price of financial stocks. While I'm interested in Japan is, with rates, going up for the first time in some of your lifetimes. I'm reading some reports that the yen could have some substantial level of appreciation against the dollar, which is dropping. But if you look at, what has the dollar been dropping against? People always say, oh, if the dollar doesn't work, where are people going to go? Well, they pushed the Swiss franc to a 14-year high, and some people piled into the yen. Not everyone's piling into the yen, but I think you could have some marginal increase that could drive some growth in yen. And if you're looking to get out of dollars, as I am, I think Japan, reasonable yield, very attractively priced companies, a number of which have international exposure and are doing deals across Asia and even all around the world, is interesting. Number four, Poland. I've told you before, and I keep reading this. By the 2030s, Poland will likely outpace the UK in terms of salaries. The UK is going in the wrong direction. We have a lot of clients who come to us to lower their taxes and increase their freedom to get out of the UK. Anyone can see that, but I get a front row seat to it. Now, Poland has a tax deal for foreigners. I don't know that we have very many clients moving to Poland, but a lot of other people are moving to Poland. They're moving to Poland for jobs. People from Poland who lived elsewhere are moving back. The place is moving in the right direction. So again, the financials have done very well. A little bit heavier on loan losses than other banks I would like, because more of a small and medium business focus. But I think you're going to see a lot more small and medium business activity in Poland in the coming years. One company that IPO'd not so long ago was a company called Żabka, which is a chain of convenience stores. And whenever I was in Poland, that was the place to go. It has not so far followed the Peter Lynch model of me thinking it's a great place and therefore the stock has done well. But there are other companies I'm looking at, for example, real estate developer. I generally don't like buying real estate developers because what assets do they have? I mean, they trade, you know, pretty conservative numbers because they're only as good as the next project. So I'm going to get to the next 6 markets in a moment. If you'd like to learn more about these markets I mentioned, you can come to our live event, Nomad Capitalist Live. But if you're looking at the bigger picture and you're saying people are moving to countries like Poland, they're lowering their taxes, it's a more conservative country. People are moving to Mexico and getting residence permits and getting citizenship. People are going to Thailand and lowering their taxes. You could be doing this. You don't just have to invest. What we help our clients do is lower their taxes, get a plan B, protect their assets. We do it all under one roof. You don't need to hire 4 different tax firms and 3 different residence and citizenship firms and a trust company. We have all those connections and we manage them under one roof. Go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply if you'd like to learn how we can help you keep more of your money, reclaim your freedom, and have a backup plan for your family and for your wealth. Onward now, India, broad market. Not a lot for me to say about that. I don't see tremendous appreciation in the currency, maybe mild appreciation in the currency. The market's done incredibly well. I'm not really becoming an Indian stock picker, in part because you cannot buy, generally, Indian stocks as a non-resident. This is where having a bank account somewhere like in Singapore comes in, where you can, on a very tax-optimized basis, buy into a series of different, Indian-focused funds. Or if you have access to, the Singapore Stock Exchange, you can buy an India-focused REIT, for example, if you want to own real estate, and they'll pay you a relatively decent tax-free yield. So again, you're seeing where you live, where you invest, where you have banks and brokerages, all impacts, how much money you make, how much of it you get to keep. But India, generally speaking, putting more money into managed products rather than going out and choosing stocks because, going and buying individual stocks on the Indian market is pretty tough. Country I've been telling you about for a long time, number 6 is Georgia. I bought real estate over the years. We had a company office that we actually sold, and I did pretty well on that. We decided to take a different approach to having an office. So I'm actually less involved in the Georgian real estate market, although looking at other opportunities, looking at fixed income, the real estate market. Guy I've known for a long time came to me and said, listen, banks aren't lending as much to real estate. They're overweight on real estate. I'll give you 12% in US dollars. I'll secure it against commercial property rented out. I know the person. This is the kind of thing that when you just get out there in the real world, you'll meet these kinds of people. And I think you could probably get higher than that. I think that this guy is a pretty low risk investment. But you look at the banks, all-time highs for Lion Financial Group, which owns Bank of Georgia. They've expanded into Armenia with the purchase of the largest bank there, Ameria Bank. They also own a bank in Belarus. TBC Bank, I think about 10% of their revenue comes from their unit in Uzbekistan. Jim Rogers was at Nomad Capitalist Live a couple of years ago. His big pick is Uzbekistan. You see that Georgia kind of continues to be this regional hub, so for the Caucasus, but increasingly for Central Asia and other parts of Eastern Europe. And so bank stocks there, there's a conglomerate in Georgia that I think that's interesting, although owning the banks directly, for me is probably a little bit better. And those are traded on the London Stock Exchange. So that's where Georgian companies generally go to list. So you don't have to have some advanced, brokerage account. You just need to be able to buy stocks listed in the UK, where, by the way, dividends are also generally tax-free. So that's a benefit as well. Investing more in the UAE. Here's a play where most brokerage accounts are not going to have access to buying stocks in the Dubai or Abu Dhabi exchange. What do? You get a bank account. People sometimes ask me, Andrew, I don't like keeping my money in cash. I like it working for me. Well, sometimes the best way to do that in these up-and-coming markets is to have a bank account there because a priority or a private bank is going to include the ability to make investments. Even some retail banks, for example, like Bank of Georgia, I got some of my employees going on and just dollar cost averaging into stocks and into index funds. But they could also buy, if there were any local companies, you'd be able to buy those as well. And so if you get a bank in Singapore, you can then make those investments into Indian companies. Some of them allow you to make investments into like Malaysian companies or Thai companies, for example. And in the UAE, you have access to their local stock markets. So lots of good financials. You have, some yielding 8 or 9%. And one of the faster growing banks in the UAE is Mashreq. You've also got builders. Again, generally wouldn't do that. But you've got a company like an Emaar that, to me, is so well positioned. They've got such a dominance that's almost indisputable if you like to make investments, I would still want to have a couple of different bank accounts in different regions of the world. Dubai, for example, for the Gulf. And even there, you can't even buy like a Saudi stock, for example. But if you get the Dubai bank, they could then refer you to a Saudi bank. And if you want to hold Saudi shares there, Saudi Arabia is not on my list, but you get the point. Having banks in different parts of the world facilitates making investments. Some of the banks do charge higher fees, particularly the European ones. But in Singapore and in the Gulf, I don't believe it's really that expensive. But the UAE is a place that I'm looking at more and buying, and I actually have bought more. Number 8 is Uzbekistan. Hard to get exposure there. You pretty much find a closed-end fund where you can just invest. And I'm doing that because it has dramatically opened up. I mean, even look at their citizenship policy. This is, again, what we get a front row seat to at Nomad Capitalist. It used to be if you were a citizen, you had to get an exit permit to leave the country, this remnant from the Soviet Union times. And they said, you know what, we got to change that. And so you see a more progressive mentality. You see the financial sector doing very well there. You see real estate's opened up to foreign investors. And so, I will be going to Uzbekistan probably by the end of the year, if not early next year, and looking specifically at real estate deals. But there are still some restrictions there. But Uzbek equities, very interesting. And Jim Rogers told us about that about 2 years ago. Number 9 is Brazil. This is a trade on U.S. geopolitics. Agriculture output from Brazil is up. There's a bumper crop and things like soybeans. Where's it going? It's going to China. Who's talking to Brazil more? China, the European Union, trying to expand more into South America. The U.S. is somewhat shot itself in the foot. I'd rather own Brazilian ag stocks. I'd rather own Brazilian defensive stocks like utility companies, financials. Not only is it a tax-free dividend, but the way that Brazil's rules work, they've got to pay out more of that money in dividends. So it's not the fastest growing country in the world, but I think geopolitically there will be some growth. And, you can take a big fat yield. Resource companies, I think if you think that they've been beaten up enough, there may be an attractive entry point in the near future for a company like Petrobras, get a big dividend. Utility companies. I'm playing based on people who are going to replace the U.S. in their supply chain. And lastly, it's a continent, not a country, but number 10 is Africa. And a lot of the companies that you look at are Pan-African. So you're seeing an increase in Pan-African banks. Some that are primarily East African, some that are more West African, some that are, Southern African, and some that are truly, Pan-African. So, Airtel Africa, for example, I found this looking at Singapore Telecom, which has done incredibly well through its dominant stake in Singapore Telecom, but also in Australia and Indonesia, but also in owning part of effectively Airtel Africa, this British traded stock that owns mobile companies and that they're doing more mobile payments, which is obviously something that, in Africa, we've somewhat skipped over the need for some, banking features. Now, you can get exposure to Africa, for example, a number of French companies like in telecom, it would be Orange, or in energy, Total, have more of that exposure. So you can go through and look at, what their African exposure is. I think that certainly a lot of African countries, particularly in West Africa, want to get rid of the French. Is that going to mean they're going to kick out Orange? I don't know about that. But I think telecom is very interesting. Again, financials. There's a great service called DABA that helps you go and you can get into various stocks and index funds, and they'll send you out the report. We are going to have a couple different experts from Africa making investments there at Nomad Capitalist Live. Definitely hope you'll check that out because we're putting a lot more focus into how to make money and where to look for those deals at Nomad Capitalist Live. But also, I think the important thing here is, how do you have bank accounts around the world that allow you to access these markets? How do you have brokerage accounts that allow you to access different markets? And what do you get if you make investments in these countries? In some of them, nothing. In others, you can get a residence permit. In Brazil, it's possible with the right structuring to get a residence permit and potentially even move towards citizenship. Thailand, very easy to get a residence permit. Mexico, easy to get a residence permit, no investment required, but go there, spend time, see. I chose a lot of my Mexican stocks because I was spending a lot of time in Mexico a couple of years ago, and I just made observations. Oh, okay, that's the strong bank. Oh, that's this. Oh, let me look into that. You're going to make more observations by getting out into the world, which is why we host Nomad Capitalist Live in Kuala Lumpur, so you can get out into the world. If you'd like us to help you put a bespoke plan together to not only diversify your money, different countries, different currencies, you'll get asset protection. Who knows? You might even have some gains and get residence in the process or even citizenship. Go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply. For me, where you invest is part of the whole ecosystem of going where you're treated best. I think your capital is going to be treated better outside of the US, outside of most Western countries in the coming years. These are the kind of places that I'm looking at. You might be looking at entirely different places, but you want to have the infrastructure that we provide for our clients to make these investments. And one thing begets the other. Having a bank account, then begets a brokerage account, you buy a foreign stock, you start seeing things, and before you know it, you're going to be a real-world Jim Rogers and Nomad Capitalist style investor.